Hi everyone, and welcome to another review. This time the TRN VX Pro, the latest in the V series, let's put it that way. And yeah, well, let me just quickly go through the box. Kind of a slightly different packaging than what lately TRN has gotten us used to. This opens this way, exactly. Okay, that opens that way. IEMs come over there, obviously. We have underneath that, sorry, we've got standard cable, which isn't all that bad. I mean, it's not good, but it isn't that bad as well. I guess kind of reminds me of the older KZs, which weren't good, weren't bad, but just what it was. I guess in this case TRN could have done a little bit better, especially when we're talking about a $90 earphone. Plenty tips, the normal standard ones, the same thing but in white, and it also brings some foam ones. So basically, you know, decent set of accessories. Oh, and it brings, let me just show you, and it brings this metal case, always nice. As for the earphones themselves, as you can see, I'm not using the standard cable, and I'll get to that in a second. As for the earphones themselves, very reminiscent of previous VX and the other V series. I mean, there isn't a dramatic difference in terms of shell. It is an all metal shell, and for the size, and taking into consideration that it's actually an 8+1 hybrid, so 8 BAs, 6 inside the shell and 2 on the nozzle, plus a DD, sorry. It's actually not that big. It's actually got a decent size. Fit is perfect in my case, at least. No complaints there. It has a 2-pin connector QDC type, although I'm not using a QDC type cable. I'm using a KBR 16 core. This particular model, the KBX 4841 2 Pro. And there's a reason why I'm using this cable, which I'll get into that in a second. But anyway, in terms of fit, like I was saying, it's fine. Isolation, it's okay, acceptable. And I'm using, as you can see, foam tips. Let me just zoom in this slightly so you can actually have a better look at them. There we go. Nice metal shell, nice brass nozzle. Very nice. Okay. What have I decided to have it compared to, and before I get into the sound and so on and so forth? Obviously, needless to say, the V90. The V80 didn't make any sense. The V90, okay, the V90, whoops, S, and then a KZ ZAS, because I thought it made sense, being kind of the IEM that's placed at around the same price and almost the same BA configuration. I thought it would make sense. And for good measure, I've actually thrown in here the GD, the GS Audio GD3A 2+1. And why? Because this, along with the XI-NHS 1+2, are, in my opinion, probably the best 1+2 hybrids at around $100 that you can get. And considering that the VX is roughly $100, I thought it would make sense to compare it with what I consider is the best IEM at that price range, in terms of hybrids, mind you. I didn't compare it with any single DD. I could have done it with the Yuan Li, which is priced around the same. I could have even compared it to the Melee, and I even thought about doing those comparisons, but if some of you that have been watching me know, I don't usually like to compare single DDs with hybrids. I have my reasons for that. I just don't like doing it. Only when it's really called for, I will do it. Anyway, on to what matters, which is the sound. Let me start by saying that I think that this has been tuned not so much for the Western market, but more for the Asian market, a market which has a tendency of liking a little bit more energy in the higher frequencies. and the style of music is also the style of music which has more info, more energy in those registers, and thus in that market I guess this IEM will do very well. As for the Western market, we have a tendency of liking our IEMs to have a more different signature, more laid back in the treble, nice mid-range, good bass. I guess I guess the majority of people in the Western world are more happy towards something like a Harman curve. But like I said, I'm not saying this to generalize or to criticize or to anything. I'm just trying to set a standard by which to better explain what I'm going to say about the VX, and so that people can get a better perception that this is an IEM that's better suited for a certain genre of music and perhaps, yes, a certain market. Having said all of that, do I like the VX? Yes. Will I use it regularly? No. And why? Okay. The first question, do I like the VX? Yes, the VX has things that I like about it. The bass on the VX is very good. It's powerful. It's textured. It's got enough resolution, in my opinion. Doesn't bleed into the mids. Is it down to the fact that they are using a CNT driver? Apparently, don't know. What I do know is when I listened to the V90, let me just get it here closer so that okay. When I listened to the V90, come here, there we go, V90 and V90S. Okay, so when I listened to the V90, the bass is there, it's full, it's fun, but it's a little bit muddy sometimes. It's not exactly the quickest bass, but it's a nice bass. The V90S has a similar bass but slightly improved. It could be done, or it could be down to these differences between these two, because I understand they use the same driver, is more to the fact that the actual higher registers, the way that the rest of the IEM has been tuned, will allow the bass on here to be more quality than on the V90. When I listen to the bass on the VX, it's definitely the best bass out of the three, undeniably. It's the quickest. It's the one that's got the most texture. It's definitely the most engaging bass out of the three. You notice it the moment you hear it. I listened to several songs, and I'll be posting my playlist as well, as I usually do. But for example, just to give you a quick example, if I hear Elephant from Carol Duboc, you notice the bass in the introduction of the music is just that more powerful. It's just that more fulfilling. There's another song by Donati, which is Antonio Carlos. That song, the bass again on the VX is fantastic. I mean, nothing really that Jennifer Warnes, Somewhere Somebody, those bass, that bass intro as well. The VX does it very nice. It's just got that sense of power and warmth, which is, at least for me, is extremely satisfying. On to mids, and actually I want to show you a graph here so that I can actually explain a few things. There we go. Okay, so VX Pro, the blue line, and as you can see, the bass in terms of what graphically it shows is very similar. I heard that some people were saying that the VX was rolling off quite significantly. Let me just put it over here again, but this is just the VX this time. I honestly don't see it rolling off significantly. It maintains itself until about 100 Hz within 2 dBs, not even there. I mean, it stays very, very relatively flat. There's a little bit of a roll off, but you don't really notice it. The difference that you see here in the two graphs is the pink line is a silicone tip and the blue line is the foam tip. If you do see the peak there at 8 being slightly different one or the other, it's down to just getting the coupler to accept the tips the best way possible, and it wasn't easy. I mean, this was perhaps a good 6 or 7 measurements here, and the rest always remained the same. It was just there that was a slight difference, so I just left it as it is. Funny enough, as you can see, the foam tip actually introduces a little bit more energy between 5 and 7-ish as compared to the silicone, but for some reason it actually sounds nicer. While foam tips have a tendency of actually bringing down excess energy and making things more smoother, especially on bright IEMs, over here it actually boosted it slightly, although the rest you can see is almost exactly the same. And the differences that do appear are post 8K, where if you were to shift that peak slightly, you could see that the foam is more energy again, but not noticeable. Honestly, I just couldn't notice it. Maybe I guess I'm just getting old. As for the comparison that I was doing before, let me just go back to that. There we go. Okay. As to this graph, which shows, no, sorry, not this one, yeah, which shows the VX with the V90S and the V90, the one that immediately jumps to your eyes as being the one that has the less energy in terms of mids, or upper mids at least, is the V90S. And in reality, that's not what you actually hear. Having on the same token, you see the V90 as being the one that has the most energy in the mids, and again, that's not what I heard. The VX Pro sits in between those two, as you can see. I managed to get the peaks of all three almost identical this time, and as you can see, I mean, below 2K they're almost identical in terms of how graphically they respond. How they sound slightly different. The V90 is definitely the more laid back one. The V90S is the one that has, let me just, sorry. The V90S is the one that I found has kind of the more open presentation. I can't really explain it. And then the VX Pro, how can I explain? In certain songs, it has that openness that the V90S has. It's really nice. It's really engaging. It's nice. On other songs, it just wants to kill me. Period. Again, it could be down just to my ears. It could be down to maybe the tuning just not matching perfectly the kind of music that I hear. But that's the truth. And for me to get to this point where I actually can listen to it and say that it's got decent response and it plays decently and only tries to keep me in certain songs, believe me, it took me a while, because with the silicone tips, and as you can see here by the graph, just with the silicone tips, that tendency of wanting to kill me at every song was way more present. There was just something there that I just couldn't understand. It was just excessively bright, while graphically you look at it and it doesn't seem to be the case. With the foam tips, you would expect it to be, by what the graph is saying, at least to be brighter, and it's not. It's only in certain songs, certain female vocals. So yes, this is definitely a bright IEM, but for some reason, and well, not for some reason, after I played around and tip rolled, I was able to find a happy halfway point where things are actually bearable. How was that done? Well, like I said, I played around with platy tips, spin fits, aslas, I did everything. And the only tip that really made things possible is the T400s, these foam T400s. It's the only tip. And then, funny enough, the cable, and the cable is a subject which generates a lot of controversy. the cable for some reason just also helped out. I don't know if it was the overall impedance of the cable, the overall interaction of the cable, IEM, deck, amplifier. I don't know if it was just that whole thing, because I used the hi-fi hip deck and I used my Chieli Q5 5K, sorry. I don't know if it was that whole interaction. It just made things much more listenable. And yes, the VX in this configuration is pretty good. Sorry about that. So to carry on, to continue what I was saying, VX Pro, sorry. Yes, in standard format, it's an excessively bright IEM, has good bass, decent mids, but then the upper mids, treble, are just excessive for some reason, although graphically that's not what is seen, and with the silicone tips and so on, it's just impossible. With foam tips and with this cable, the 16 core cable, it becomes a much nicer IEM as compared to the V90 and to the V90S. The V90 definitely is the more laid back of the three. The V90S is the in-between, and honestly, myself, if I was to choose between any of these three, I'd probably go for this one. Technically, in terms of technicalities, timbre, tonality, soundstage, imaging, and all of that, none of these three are correct, because they all have either lacking in too much or excess in other things. So if the excess treble on the VX Pro might give it a sense of false airiness and stage and so on and so forth, the reality is it just spoils the whole timbre, and tonality is not correct here. The same thing goes for the V90S. That excess treble that it has, although, and that's where it's actually interesting, is because when graphically you look at it, you would think, hold on, being so apparently bright up top as compared to the rest, and I'll just show you. So if you actually get a zoom, come on, hello, zoom, there we go. So if you look at the green line, and you see that the green line, well, basically is saying that this is going to be so bright as compared, no, it actually isn't. What spoils the V90S's presentation for me is just that treble sounds just too metallic, too BA, too not natural. So that's what spoils it there. With regards to the V90, again, you see it has a lot of, it's got a peak there, but then it actually comes down. So it's got that 8K peak, but then it actually comes down. You notice that treble-wise, it's probably the one that's been done the best out of the three. It doesn't have excess treble to the point that it wants to kill you, but the quality of the treble again isn't exactly the best. So technically wise, none of these three IEMs are perfect, like I was saying. Soundstage is barely acceptable on all three. Imaging, the same thing. Detailed retrieval, yes, that all that treble energy that you have on here and on here, so on the VX Pro and the V90S, does help towards making detailed retrieval pretty decent, and you can pick and get all the little things and so on and so forth. On the V90S, that kind of is a little bit laid back, but it's a pity, because I mean, when we're talking the VX Pro, we're talking about what is probably now their top of the line hybrid IEM, and you would expect it to be really something special. And it's not like they don't have the means or the know-how. I'm sure they do, I think they're just playing the numbers game, and by that I mean the more BAs you can cram in there, the better it is. No, no. And that's where a BA or, sorry, an earphone like the GD3A comes into play. This is a 1DD, 2BA item. Simple. There's no excess of anything here. It's just simple configuration. I am sure that the dynamic driver used here is not of the same quality as of the VXs, but it's so well tuned, it's so well put together that when you listen to it, you say to yourself, "Wow, wow, this really plays well." And those that actually did see my review of the GD3A, you know how highly I rated it. You know that I said and I consider it to be one of the best hybrids, if not probably the best, at its price range. Let me just show you quickly the graph. The GD's curve will be the one that's red. It is just nice sub bass, nice mid bass. There's no bleeding into the mids. It's just that whole transition is very nice. If anything, sometimes that excess quickness of the bass sometimes detracts a little bit from the overall timbre or tonality of the voices of the vocals. At least I found that sometimes the male vocals, they were slightly recessed. The female vocals on the other hand are perfect. I mean, nothing to point out there. Soundstage is wide. You know, the treble is clean. It's not sibilant. It's really a well tuned, well implemented IEM. And when you compare its curve to the blue curve, which is the one of the VX Pro, you know, you say to yourself, okay, there's differences here, but how can these differences translate themselves to such huge difference when you actually listen to it? And the reality is it's day and night. The GD3A is on a different league altogether, and for the same price. I mean, so that's why I say it's a pity that actually, you know, TRN and like I said, they have the know-how. They don't learn lessons from companies like GS Audio, and that I'm just using GS Audio as an example, and apply some of some of what they might learn from looking at things like this onto their own stuff. Is it because they want to maintain a certain image? Is it because they want to carry on being more turned towards a certain market? I don't know. All I do know, it's a pity because I mean the quality of the IEM is here in terms of construction. It's an IEM that definitely has potential, and it's just a pity. The other IEM that I brought for terms of comparison was the ZAS, and the ZAS is everything in terms of mids and highs that the VX Pro isn't. So it's way more laid back, especially in the highs. There's no aggressiveness in the highs. There's no wanting to try and kill you. If anything, if I'm gonna actually bring out a criticism, is that I actually would like if the ZAS had a little bit more energy sometimes to make up, you know, to just complement things slightly. Again, in terms of soundstage and so on and so forth, not the most correct. But it's like I say, this is a dark IEM in comparison to the VX Pro. So the ZAS is a dark IEM. It's got tremendous bass, tremendous bass. That bass sometimes renders the mids a little bit recessed and so on. It's true. The highs, they could be more present, but again, I don't know. Perhaps they missed out just there on the tuning. They did do one thing right, which was they put all the BAs in the shell. There's nothing in the nozzle, so that was done right. They just need to, I believe, just fine tune slightly the higher frequencies. Maybe I wouldn't even touch the bass, because if the higher frequencies, if the higher register is just a little bit more emphasized, then the whole thing will come together much nicer. A ZAS Pro or something, I guess. But this, off the bat, and compared to a standard VX Pro, I would say the ZAS is also a superior IEM. And yeah, basically that's it. I mean, this has been a little bit of a long review. I'll just recap everything nicely. So I took the VX Pro, compared it to the V90S, compared it to the V90, and then brought in the GD3A from GS Audio and the KZ ZAS as well for good measure. As compared to its younger brothers or older brothers or whatever you want to call it, the V90 is definitely the more recessed one. The V90S almost as bright, but the brightness somehow here is a little bit more tamed. And out of the three, personally, I would choose the V90S. That's me personally. Having said that, the VX Pro, with the cable that it has and with the tips that I was able to, finally get right, I mean, really, I like it a lot. I really do. Would I listen to it a lot? No, and the reason being, I just have better IEMs to listen to, and one's costing the same, the GD3A for example. As compared to the ZAS, my opinion is that the ZAS is a darker IEM, definitely, but again, it's got a specific market that I'm sure that it's trying to reach. There were some things here which were done in a more intelligent manner, especially with regards to how the BAs have been implemented in terms of their location. However, their tuning needs a little bit of a touch, and if that is accomplished, then to give it a little bit more openness, a little bit more clarity, then this will be a very, very good IEM. And as I've said, KZ has actually been impressing us of late with their IEMs, the EDX, the DQ6, the ZEX, and the ZAS. I think are all very good in their own right, in their own categories. As for the GD3A, out of all of them, that would be the IEM that I would choose, hands down. And if there's anything I want to say, is that this has potential, definitely, and TRN should look at that, for example, and learn some lessons, because this could have been an absolute winner, a beast, if only they didn't worry too much about the numbers game. No, more BAs, more. No, don't. I mean, no. On the other hand, and having just said that, if their focus is the Asian market, the local Chinese market, and so on and so forth, then great. I mean, I guess that was also the idea behind the VX, the original VX, which I don't have, and that was quite popular in those markets, not so much in the outside world. And if that is the idea, that was the reason for the way it was tuned, then carry on doing it like it is. If, however, you want to be more competitive, in my opinion, with the Western market and satisfy more the Western ears, it was a good try, but you still didn't get there. The V90S is a better one still. Anyway, thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed this little review of mine. Any question, as always, please let me know. If there's any other comparisons you would like me to do, please let me know. And yeah, take care. Bye bye. Have a nice day.